The sun beat down gently on the shimmering surface of the neighborhood pool, the water catching the light like 1,000 tiny diamonds. It was one of those perfect summer afternoons, bright, breezy, and filled with the carefree laughter of children. The upscale Oak Ridge Estates community pool, usually quiet and well-ordered, buzzed with life. Lush green hedges framed the sparkling blue water, and stylish lounge chairs lined the deck, occupied by neighbors sipping iced tea, scrolling through their phones, or chatting beneath wide-brimmed hats. 17-year-old Imani Carter dipped her feet into the cool water, a relaxed smile on her face. She wore a modest yet stylish one-piece swimsuit and had a thick book tucked into her beach bag. Her dark curls were pulled up into a puff, and her sunglasses mirrored the bright sky. Confident and calm, Imani didn't stand out. She simply belonged, as much a part of the scenery as the pool itself. She laughed with her two friends, Maya and Zoe, both classmates from her private school. The girls had been planning this little get-together since the last week of finals, and had been excited for a rare break between internships, sports practice, and volunteer work. The three teens had staked out a shady spot under a large umbrella, enjoying their snacks and chatting about everything from college dreams to the latest summer music. For Imani, the day was supposed to be an escape, a moment to unwind, to just be a regular teen. But comfort has a way of being interrupted. From across the deck, a woman watched them. She wore oversized sunglasses, a wide straw hat, and a tense expression. Her name was Linda Maynard, a longtime resident of Oak Ridge Estates. To anyone else, she looked like just another suburban mom, enjoying a day by the pool. But her gaze lingered too long, her mouth set in a line that didn't match the festive atmosphere. Within minutes, Linda approached the girl's umbrella. "Hi there," she said with forced cheer. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Imani looked up with a friendly smile. "Yes, it is. Feels like summer's finally here." Linda nodded, but didn't leave. Instead, she glanced around, then leaned slightly forward. "I'm just curious. Do you all live here? I don't recognize you. The pool is for residents and their guests only, you know." There it was, the first drop of discomfort. Maya shifted in her seat, and Zoe exchanged a knowing look with Imani. They'd seen this before. Imani answered calmly, "Yes, I know. I'm here as a guest. Everything's fine." Linda's eyes narrowed just a touch. "Uh-huh. And who exactly invited you?" Imani's smile didn't waver. "My aunt. She lives on Hawthorne Drive. I come here all the time." Still Linda didn't back down. "Well, it's just, we have rules, and we take safety seriously. I hope you're all following the guidelines. No roughhousing, no loud music, no food too close to the pool. You understand." Her tone was coated in politeness, but every word dripped with assumption. Imani heard the real message loud and clear. She knew exactly what was happening, but she stayed composed. "We're just relaxing, ma'am," she replied, still respectful. "Everything we brought is allowed." Linda forced another smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. She lingered a moment longer, as if expecting something to change. When nothing did, she turned and walked away, but not without glancing back twice. The day had started so peacefully, but now, a quiet tension had entered the space. Imani let out a slow breath, and turned back to her friends. "Same old story," she muttered. Zoe shook her head. "You handled it like a pro." Imani just smiled faintly, and looked out at the pool, not yet realizing that this was only the beginning. An hour passed, and the heat mellowed into a golden warmth. The pool was alive with splashes, laughter, and the sound of a Bluetooth speaker playing soft pop in the background. Imani had just finished a lap across the deep end, water glistening on her shoulders, when she noticed Linda walking toward her again, this time with purpose in every step. The air seemed to shift as people noticed. A few nearby parents stopped mid-conversation, instinctively pulling their children a little closer. Linda's heels clacked on the concrete as she marched right up to Imani, who was now toweling off at the edge of her umbrella-shaded spot. "Okay, young lady," Linda said, her voice louder than necessary. "I've given you enough chances. You need to leave now." Imani blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me, you heard me. I asked around. No one here knows you, and your story doesn't check out. I have every reason to believe you're trespassing." Her voice carried across the pool, drawing attention. Conversations began to die down. Several heads turned. The air became charged with awkward tension. Imani's friends froze, unsure what to do. "I'm not trespassing," Imani said, her tone firm but calm. "I told you before, I'm here with my aunt's permission. I have every right to be here." Linda scoffed, waving her hand as if dismissing the words like flies. "Don't lie to me. You think you can just walk in here and pretend you belong? This isn't a public park. This is a private community. We have standards." Some people looked away, uncomfortable. A man sitting by the diving board whispered something to his wife. A teenage boy, near the snack machine, subtly pulled out his phone and began recording. The tension was no longer just between Linda and Imani. It was becoming a spectacle. "I'm not pretending anything," Imani said, her voice steady despite the growing crowd. "You're making assumptions based on nothing." "Don't talk back to me," Linda snapped. "You're not a resident. You're not a guest of a resident. If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police." Imani inhaled deeply, standing to her full height, her towel wrapped neatly around her shoulders. Her friends remained quiet, letting her lead. "You might want to rethink that," Imani said, her voice even and unshaken. Linda's eyebrows shot up. "Oh really? And why is that?" Imani didn't answer immediately. She held Linda's gaze for a long second, her silence speaking volumes. The surrounding pool-goers leaned in just slightly, sensing something shifting. At that moment it became clear. This wasn't going to unfold the way Linda expected, and for the first time that day, it was Linda who looked uncertain. Linda stood with her hands on her hips, radiating smug authority. With a theatrical sigh, she pulled out her phone and dialed the local police. The entire pool seemed to fall into an eerie quiet, the kind that often comes before a storm. Kids still played in the water, oblivious, but the adults nearby had tuned in completely. "Yes, I'd like to report a trespasser," Linda said loudly, making sure her voice carried. "Yes, at the Oak Ridge Estates community pool. She refuses to leave. No, she doesn't live here. I've already asked her multiple times." Imani didn't flinch. She sat back down on her towel, slipping her phone from her bag. She didn't need to argue anymore. Her fingers moved over the screen with quiet confidence as she sent a quick message. Then she placed the phone face down beside her and crossed her legs, her expression unreadable but calm. Linda, seeing no visible panic, grew irritated. "You think this is a joke?" she said, glaring down at Imani. "This is what happens when people think they're above the rules. I don't care who you think you are. People like you don't just get to walk into places like this." That sentence hit like a slap. A few pool-goers gasped softly. One mother looked away, clearly ashamed to be witnessing it. A man in a sun hat stood up from his chair, looking ready to intervene, but hesitated. Imani still didn't react. She looked ahead, calm and poised. Her silence was powerful, more unsettling than any outburst. 15 minutes later, 2 police officers walked through the pool gate. Their presence brought a nervous ripple through the crowd. Linda immediately waved them over, pointing toward Imani, like she'd just caught a criminal in the act. "There she is," she said. "That's the girl. She doesn't live here. She won't leave, and she's getting aggressive." Imani rose slowly from her seat, wiping a bit of water from her brow. She reached into her bag, pulled out her wallet, and handed over her ID without a word. One of the officers looked at the card and paused. He squinted slightly, reading the name again. His expression changed from professional distance to something closer to recognition. The second officer leaned in, curious. The first officer gave him a nudge, and murmured something low enough that no one else could hear. Both men straightened their posture a little. "Miss Carter," the first officer said, voice suddenly more respectful. "Is everything all right here?" "Yes, sir," Imani replied. "I'm here as a guest. My aunt lives on Hawthorne Drive. There shouldn't be a problem." The officer nodded, handing back her ID. "Understood. Thank you." Linda looked stunned. "Wait, what's going on? Why aren't you doing anything?" The second officer turned to her, tone noticeably cooler than before. "Ma'am, we're going to need to verify your claims before taking any further action." And just like that, the balance of power shifted. The officer who had returned Imani's ID turned to Linda with a firm but controlled expression. "Ma'am, can we speak with you over here?" he said, motioning a few steps away from the pool chairs. Linda followed reluctantly, arms folded and jaw tight, clearly expecting to be praised for her vigilance. But the officer's hushed tones and pointed glances said otherwise. Their demeanor had shifted entirely. They weren't treating her like a concerned resident. They were treating her like a potential problem. Back at her seat, Imani calmly pulled out her phone again. Her hands were steady, her voice composed as she tapped her father's contact and put the call on speaker for everyone nearby to hear. "Hey, Daddy," she said, keeping her tone casual. A deep voice answered immediately. "Hey, sweetheart, everything all right?" Imani glanced toward the officers, then toward Linda, who was still gesturing as she tried to defend herself. "Not really. Someone called the cops on me at the pool, said I didn't belong here." There was a brief silence on the line, then a low, angry breath. "Give the phone to the officer." Imani walked calmly toward the nearest officer and handed over the phone without saying a word. He accepted it and held it to his ear. "Yes, sir. This is Officer Daniels. Governor Carter." "Yes, she's safe, sir. Completely cooperative. I understand." "Of course, sir." The second officer looked at him sharply, then quickly stepped closer to listen in. "Yes, Governor," the first officer said again, this time louder. "Understood. We'll ensure nothing further happens." Everyone within earshot froze. Heads turned. A teenage girl nearby whispered to her mother, who was already pulling out her phone. Within seconds, quiet murmurs started to rise. "Wait, did he say governor? No way, that's Imani Carter, Marcus Carter's daughter." Someone quickly opened a search on their phone, typing Imani's full name. The results popped up immediately. Photos of Imani standing next to her father at a campaign rally, a press release about her scholarship to a leadership academy, even a recent interview where she spoke about youth civic engagement. It was unmistakably her. Linda stood in stunned silence as realization dawned. Her skin drained of color. Her eyes darted toward Imani, then the officers, then back again. The same teen boy who had been recording earlier now had his phone pointed toward Linda, capturing every expression on her face as it crumbled into regret and embarrassment. The officer returned the phone to Imani with a respectful nod. "Your father says he'll be contacting the HOA directly." Imani simply said, "Thank you," and turned to return to her chair. Linda took a slow, shaky step forward, her voice now small. "I didn't know who you were." Imani didn't even look at her. "That's the problem," she said quietly, then sat down, the spotlight now fully on Linda. And for the first time all day, Linda had nothing to say. By the next morning, the incident at the Oak Ridge Estates community pool had exploded across the internet. The video, beginning with Linda confronting Imani and ending with the police officer addressing Governor Carter over the phone, had racked up millions of views overnight. People were shocked by the entitlement, the assumptions, and the chilling clarity of the moment when Linda realized exactly who Imani was.
The hashtag #poolside privilege began trending on every major platform. Comment sections overflowed with support for Imani, while outrage toward Linda reached a boiling point. People weren't just angry that Imani had been harassed, they were angry that this type of situation was so familiar. Imani's composure, her dignity in the face of such blatant disrespect, made her a symbol of grace under fire. News outlets quickly picked up the story. Local channels were the first to air the footage, but it wasn't long before national media joined in. Interviews were requested, editorials were written, public figures, activists, and even celebrities weighed in, praising Imani and calling out the deeper issues her experience revealed. Linda was quickly identified, thanks to online sleuths. Her name, job and social media profiles spread like wildfire. Oak Ridge Estates residents began issuing statements to distance themselves from her behavior. One neighbor posted, "We're ashamed this happened in our community. Imani is always welcome here." Another wrote, "We stand with the Carter family. This is not who we are." The HOA, feeling the pressure, released a formal apology. "We deeply regret the incident that occurred at our community pool involving Miss Imani Carter. Discrimination in any form is unacceptable. We are implementing mandatory bias and inclusion training for all staff and are revising our community policies to ensure such an event never happens again." Though it was too little, too late for some, the gesture was necessary. The HOA president personally called Governor Carter to express remorse. At the state capitol 2 days later, a podium was set for an emergency press conference. Cameras flashed, and reporters crowded in. As Governor Marcus Carter stepped forward, he wore a somber expression, not just as a father but as a leader with a message. "My daughter was disrespected," he said clearly, "not because of who she is, but because of what she looks like." He paused, letting the words sink in. This is a painful reminder that no matter how educated, accomplished, or well-behaved a young black person might be, they can still be targeted simply for existing in a space others deem not theirs. We must do better, not just for Imani, but for every child who has ever been made to feel unwelcome in their own community. The crowd erupted in applause, and across the nation, a dialogue had begun, not just about pools or privilege, but about the quiet, everyday moments that reveal where we still fall short. Imani, quiet but strong, remained out of the spotlight. She hadn't asked to become a symbol, she just wanted a swim on a summer day. But now, she was part of something bigger. In the days following the media storm, Imani chose to respond not with anger, but with thoughtful reflection. She published an op-ed in a major national outlet titled, "When Your Skin Speaks Before You Do." In it she spoke not just about what happened at the pool, but about the broader realities so many face every day. How assumptions are made in a split second, how privilege often hides behind politeness, and how being black in certain spaces still invites suspicion, even in 2025. "I wasn't just a girl in a swimsuit," she wrote. "To some, I was a threat, an outsider, a question that needed answering, and that's the part that hurts the most." The piece struck a chord. Thousands of messages poured in from across the country. Teens who had experienced similar moments of quiet humiliation, parents who were outraged, teachers who asked for permission to share the op-ed with their students. Imani had unknowingly become a voice for so many. Meanwhile, Linda made an awkward appearance on a local news segment. Her apology was brief and clearly rehearsed. She focused on how the backlash had affected her life, rather than addressing the harm she caused. It was received coldly. No one missed that her tone still carried the same entitlement, only now shaded by embarrassment. But Imani didn't dwell on her. She had other things to focus on: school visits, panel invitations, interviews. She was invited to speak at youth forums and assemblies, sharing her story with students who hung on every word. What could have been just another viral outrage became a meaningful conversation because she led with integrity. A few weeks later, Imani returned to the Oak Ridge Estates pool. The sun was high, The water shimmered, and laughter echoed once more. But this time, the scene was different. A more diverse group of children splashed around, unbothered and joyful. Several parents waved at Imani, greeting her warmly. She took off her sandals, set her towel down, and stepped confidently toward the pool. Her head was high, her spirit unshaken. She joined a group of kids playing water tag, and soon, her laughter joined theirs. In that moment, belonged to everyone.